Greetings, this is Professor Mark Gura. Welcome to my class, where my students and I shine a light on education and bring it into sharp focus. Our goal is high quality teaching and learning, something we stretch for through facing unvarnished truths and seeking practical insights. What follows is a conversation I had with Dr. Camille Dempsey, a professor at Penn West University and the recently appointed director of its Center for Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technologies. Over the years, Camille has contributed significantly to the field of education and the integration of technology into the course of study in particular. Welcome, Camille, and great to see you again. It's a good moment, I think, to introduce Camille Dempsey. How are you, Dr. Dempsey?
I'm good. How are you, Mark? It's been a long time.
It's been a minute. It's actually been 26 years. And that's kind of amazing and worth talking about for a moment. Actually, I have here in the notes your profile, your mini bio, which we're only going to look at a couple of highlights. The main highlight for all of us is that you were a teacher. You were actually a teacher, and to me, that makes all of the difference. And so how long were you in the classroom?
Yeah, I was in the classroom for about 12 years. I love teaching. I don't think we get into this if we don't like people and kids. So
Well,
hopefully everybody that's in the class is, at least happy to work with people and kids. So it was a while, but I've spent most of my time in higher ed.
well, that's okay. I mean, it actually came to me the other day. I had been a classroom teacher for 18 years and then finished my 31 years as a central district administrator, but I've probably been adjuncting now for longer than that. I mean, longer than the 18 years. At any rate, I'll share with you that at one point I was a member of the Deputy Chancellor for Instruction cabinet. I don't know that all of those people loved to be teachers. I sincerely doubt it. Anyhow, thanks for joining us. I like to invite people in. My class and I, we have some great conversations here, at least from my perspective, based on our readings and our assignments. But I like to bring a few guests in each semester. I think it's good to get other voices, other opinions, other perspectives, and other role models in here. So, having said all of that, I want to state that the title of this course is Technology Integration for School Leaders, and we use the term leader and the peer leader. So this is taught and learned from the perspective of everyone who's really tech savvy, working on a teaching staff. In effect, gets to be a peer leader. And because it's about tech integration, we're not really about technology education. It's about how technology impacts teaching and learning across the curriculum. I'm going to share this with you, and I'll ask you for a comment. I always show this at the beginning of our semester, Camille, because I find that teachers and principals, this is a good metaphor for the understanding. They have a very fragmented, very niche. Some teachers use tech as a teaching tool, some use it for assessment, but very few have a big picture understanding. So I'll ask you to comment on that. Does your experience bear that out? I'm sure it must to some degree.
Yeah, I teach at a university in Western Pennsylvania called Penn West University. And I have students just like all of you. I teach technology integration, and I do teach a technology for leaders class, which is more about the ed tech side and integrating things. And I think right now, for example, everyone's really focused on AI and VR. And I think it's really important that we're looking at the shift, like what's happening in education as leaders, and how do we help prepare people for this shift? Not that those things aren't all important, but we're going into a time that AI is not going away, and neither are these other emerging technologies. And I think if we can find a way to help keep people calm, I think that's now part of being a leader, keeping people calm, accepting the fact that these things are here to stay, but that there are issues with them, and that we need to explore, help people explore and come to some understanding about them. And that's hard to do. Like right now, emotions are running high and people have really strong opinions politically, just even in terms of I was talking to a student the other day about AI and the environment. And it's okay to have strong opinions, but I think we have to be careful that we don't go into our teaching situation with, a whole lot of bias against or for something when, your students might have different perspectives. So it's a tough time to be a teacher, but it's also a really exciting time. There's a lot to be excited about. So yeah, but I agree. I think a lot of people miss the mark on seeing the systems level things. Absolutely.
Well, there's nothing in being a teacher that would have you, or a AP on a school level, that would have you take the 10 steps backwards to get the global view of ed tech, because everyone's immersed in their specific needs and the tools used to satisfy those needs. But I think it's a good thing to do, to get a
Yeah.
big, I'm always pushing here for the biggest big picture understanding. And so my follow-up on this is this what's happening with AI? Are people getting these little isolated niche understandings? I mean, I would imagine so.
Yeah, I think what's happened, I mean, it's showing up in all of our digital spaces, right? Like I know your students here, many of them, I'm sure, are on Snapchat and Instagram, and you're seeing these things popping up in tools and social media things that you're kind of used to. And so it's sort of like we can't get away from that, and then we can't get away from it in places that we're, like that affect our workflow, right? Like Microsoft Copilot. We use that at my university at Penn West, and it just pops up whether I want it to write an email or not, it's there. So I think people are grappling with that, like, well, what do I do with this thing? And other people are just running with it. And I think this is really the new divide. It's sort of like we used to talk about the haves and the have-nots with the internet. And now it's like, well, who's using prompt engineering and prompting these tools, and then who's avoiding them, and then like what does that mean down the line, especially for students? And I don't know if you've seen, just yesterday Trump signed an executive order for AI education in the schools. And
Actually, I haven't seen that.
yeah, so it might be something worth talking and exploring. But that not only is this idea of AI not going away, but it's gaining traction in many different areas. Like I serve as a Google ambassador, so I usually travel every year to Google and meet with AI engineers and talk with them. This was the first year I didn't, because I direct our Center for AI and Emerging Technologies, so it's been a little bit busy and we just opened it. I think what's interesting is when we think about what's happening politically and how many things have been cut as far as the budget on the national level, and then like whole offices. Like, for example, the Office of Educational Technology and the Office of Innovation, they're gone. Those were eliminated. And so when we start to look at these kinds of things that are coming up and the promise of funding, it's just interesting to sort of think about. Like, I've never heard of this Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which they're saying there's funding allocated to that, which will now be redirected. If this sticks, and if, the big if, right? With politics, who knows what's going to happen? It's been a roller coaster ride, but it'll be really interesting to see how this trickles down, not only higher eds, but particularly to K to 12s.
There's a new funding stream. Of course, people are going to step up to that plate. I mean, that's kind of like, from the district administration perspective, kind of the 11th commandment is, thou shalt accept any funding that's offered and then figure out how to use it. Except in this case, if they're offering funding to do something with AI, There is not much of a body of folks who have any grounding in what that means or what to do with it. That'll kind of sort itself out. Quickly, just for grins, I wanted to share this photo I took at the cash register, my supermarket yesterday afternoon. So there you have, right next to the Inquirer is one of those special edition things they put out. They put it right in the middle. Everything you need to know about artificial intelligence, right there, 3 paces from the deli aisle.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
If only
Well,
it was that simple.
you mean you don't think everything we need to know is in that publication? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a good layman's guide to get started, but I find a lot of things to really vilify technology, and with fear comes that resistance, right? Like the other day, I heard a conversation two professors were having about how important books were, and the other professor's like, "What do we need books for now?" And I really enjoyed hearing like the professor who was really holding onto the book really making some strong arguments about like holding on to literacy and how important reading and writing is. And then the other professor was making great points about the direction we're going in with more virtualized ways of knowing. And I find myself thinking that we're just at this point in our evolution where these two things are coming together. And it's creating a lot of dissonance, just like when we look at politics shifting. There's definitely something bigger happening than just AI, technology. This is a greater shift, and as a culture, it'll be really interesting to, for our ancestors to look back and see what they say about this time period. Like I know some people have referred to this time period as like the new Renaissance, but it isn't. It's something else, or the Gilded Age, and it's totally not the Gilded Age. It's something else. It's something that will be unique at some point in the future. And again, I think as teachers, we have to keep our focus on what are the skills that, like for example, the AI literacy skills. What are those skills that our students need to know? And how do we get on board so that we're not saying it's good or bad, but we're saying, what are these skills that students need to know? And what do we do about it? And schools are struggling. I mean, just this morning, I sat with an administrator and he said, because he wants me to do this professional development for them. And he said, Camille, they just cut $9 million in our Title I funds, like the government. And I just kind of like did this, because I know how much that money means, like you were saying, Mark, to schools. And he's like, I feel like I want to believe that this money is coming down with this AI, thing that was signed. But he's like, until we see it, we're just really nervous about all the things that are being cut. And I mean, I get that. I mean, that's the reality that administrators live in.
Made some good points there. And yeah, I really like that you put your finger on this. I don't know what kind of point in time we are, but clearly we are in a post-text dominant literacy, but people get their news from podcasts and from cable and from social media. And yet we don't want to and functionally can't give up print. And some of those bastions of print, like the New York Times, have reinvented themselves as, I was going to say quasi-digital platforms, but the New York Times now is certainly more digital than it is text, but it's still the Times. And so that's a great example for you to give, being mindful of the time. What I really want to talk to you about is, I should mention that out of all of the colleagues in the world, what got me thinking about Dr. Dempsey? Well, I used to see you occasionally on LinkedIn, but lately I've been seeing you all over Facebook using it professionally. So I stress that in this course, that social media is an important, it's becoming a crucial way of being a connected educator. I want to congratulate you on your designation now as the director for Penn West Center for Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technologies. Congratulations. And it struck me that we really ought to talk about why has this university decided to create, and it was just launched less than a week ago. Why did this come about? What's the need? What's the vision? What's the mission? I'm sure you've been talking about this a lot, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, if it's okay, I wanted to respond to something you just said about social media real quick, and then I can jump into that.
Good.
One of the things that I tell especially my grad students, but even my undergrads, is that one of the social media platforms that I think is really underrated by that demographic is Facebook. I think most of us, like my daughter's at Pitt, and she's in Instagram, not so much Snapchat, although she's like, I use it sometimes, Mom. And not so much, I guess, TikTok, because I think of all the things that have happened. But anyway, her preferred area is Instagram. And I know that might be true for some of you here. And the challenge with staying connected, especially like I tell my students, stay connected to the people ahead of you, not just your peers. And the people ahead of you are on Facebook. So like
Wow.
the mentors that you're looking for, the teachers who are out here like every day making what they do happen with tech, the tech groups, like all these networking opportunities, they are on Facebook. So I would really highly recommend, I mean, I know it's adding something onto your social, media strategy, but professionally, I think when you think about using social media professionally versus using it personally, it's not about the tool. It's about who you're trying to connect to. And I find like my students have a hard time with that. They're like, well, I talk to my friends. I look on Instagram, I find, recipes for things for my class. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Like it's a wonderful place, but don't forget about, those of us who are, moving and grooving, and we've got tons of stuff to share. And I can tell like the students who, and not that I'm encouraging you to like stalk professors or things, but like the ones that are super active are going to be so helpful to you. And the same thing goes for teachers. So like when you're, working on, some of you might be working in teaching right now. I'm not saying that you want to stalk all their Facebook profiles, but it can be really helpful to know a little something about them. So I did want to say that because I think, Facebook was kind of like my generation, and even my daughter will say, Mom, we don't really do Facebook, but she's there. And every so often I'll see something she likes and I'm like, uh-huh. Like, I think she's starting to get that. So, but as far as changing gears on the center and the why we launched this thing.
I mean, what is this then? The Penn West establishes a Center for Artificial
Yeah.
Intelligence and Emerging Technologies.
Yeah, it's basically it started as a hub for our region. We are in a rural area, which can be a challenging thing, right? We have many broadband deserts. And when I say that, what I mean is that connectivity with different, not only schools, but families and businesses is not necessarily what it is in a big city. And we're located near a city, Erie, Pennsylvania. So there's that urban vibe like nearby, but the thought was, what if we created this hub to help support not only our faculty, staff, and students around how AI and other technologies are evolving, but also how can we help our community at a time when many of the people in the rural area are being left behind. And that's true in some urban places as well. So, we wanted to do something that would help improve, that sort of awareness about education. And it absolutely has. Even though we officially launched last week, I've been working on this project since last fall, and we've had tons of stakeholders coming in to ask questions and, wanting to work with our students. And so, there are quite a few things that, quite a few reasons why we started it. And there's lots of initiatives. Like, I'm happy to talk about any of those. But I think that the reality is that we've got to do something. And this was our university's attempt at supporting our region. And it's since spanned out, like we're getting requests all over the place, not just in Western Pennsylvania, but because these things don't exist everywhere, I think people are wanting help. And, with social media, we know, our circles are nice and broad. So you can connect with, other places. So yeah, I think that was kind of the vision, was just bringing a much needed education to a region that just is has been really struggling with this.
Your mission is to serve the community, but I would imagine teachers are going to be a big part of who shows up seeking support and insight. And I think it's great that your school has decided not simply to offer another course, in AI, general AI, and maybe we'll throw in a course in generative AI, but you're not stopping there. You're creating this hub where people can come for expertise. And I gather you will be not just the faculty, you will be inviting in other people to enrich what's available through the center.
Yeah. And that's already been happening on a crazy scale that I can't control anymore. So it's been a whirlwind. We've had tons of schools, and I just did a professional development session for 187 teachers and administrators on AI, specifically AI literacy. And I was blown away because normally your administrators, and you know this, Mark, they're not always able to stay for the whole session, right? And we did a whole morning. Every one of the administrators stayed. And I was blown away because I just know how busy they are. It's, they're stepping
Yeah,
out of things. And the fact that they stayed the whole time, like the whole 4 hours, really, really told me something. So,
that says a lot. I
yeah.
remember from when I was in that position, it was expected I would show up, for a couple of hundred teachers to have coffee, and then whoever it was I had designated to run the workshop would ask me to, quotes, give greetings, say, hi, it's wonderful to be here. You're doing great work today, and I want to hear more about it tomorrow, and have a great day. And so if they stayed, it means you were offering something that they wanted to know about and sense they need. And I'm included, I have to admit, I'm putting together my over the summer to learn list. And there's a lot of AI in there. I got a lot of catching up to do. And I wanted to mention, well, I'll mention two other things. One, in Googling about your center, I noticed
Yeah.
that a lot of other universities are beginning to create entities that at least have similar names. And so
Mhm.
maybe you'll comment on that, because I think something in this class, we constantly talk about how adopting and integrating technology follows a need. And I guess you've put your finger on the mother of all needs at the moment.
Yeah, there's a couple other schools in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a really huge state. I mean, it takes me about 8 or 9 hours to get across the state. I'm all the way in the upper, like the little cutout, or I should say the projection in the other part of the state in the upper left side. If I drive diagonally all the way to Philadelphia on the lower, eastern side, it's about 8 or 9 hours. And so, yeah, there have been three schools in Pennsylvania, actually, three universities that have started AI. One is a hub, it's Penn State's hub for AI. But they're in a totally different area and with a totally different demographic. So I kind of like the fact that we're working with different, stakeholders and helping the different people that we help. And of course, there's Carnegie Mellon, who does a lot of work with creating robots. I mean, we just got our first robot, which was very exciting. We have a robot dog, and
Yeah.
right now our university's in the process of naming the dog, so it's pretty funny. Yeah, I think there are things like this around the country. I hope at some point maybe we could have like almost like a national hub. I don't know that it'll happen with this administration. But I certainly know they're putting together AI task forces, and I don't know. I don't know who's even on them, but it would be really nice to see some kind of a national some kind of a hub or resource center, something. I mean, other countries have AI training, like even Estonia of all the places in the world has a national initiative to help everyone in their culture with learning about AI. And in the US, we're a little bit of we're the wild, wild west. We don't have policy that regulates AI in a major way. We have some states who have started to regulate it and others who have not. So that creates a lot of disconnect, right? And so, yeah, I think right now, I mean, I know Penn West, we did things sort of, it was like a grassroots effort. And other universities are spending huge money. They're saying, hey, we're going to create like a $20 billion grant to do professional development. We very much started grassroots, and I'm very happy about that because we're feeling our way through kind of what the needs are before we start. I don't know. I always worry when people get all this money and they start pushing out what they want everybody to do. We're starting in reverse, which is we're asking questions about what everyone needs. And that includes our whole campus culture, but outside as well. And it's just created much more ownership, I think, with all the different partners, because I think they feel more invested. So
It sounds like there's a lot of people beyond the university knocking on your door, which is great because, whether everybody goes to the supermarket and buys that publication or not, they're probably going to need to know more in a big way. This really is the moment. I want to ask you about your outreach because in a sense, you're brand new and still finding your sea legs. I wanted to ask you about this because the title of your center is Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technologies. And I didn't ask your permission, but you posted this publicly on Facebook. And I don't need to ask you about your outreach. I gather when you do reach out, you'll use social media among many other things. But here you were saying you were looking for some Penn West students, alumni, faculty, friendly souls who you're looking for volunteers at the augmented reality sessions. So my point in all of this is your center won't be handling just AI. Maybe you'll comment on that a bit.
yeah, I should have talked about that. So we have other technologies. We have like the brand new Meta 3 headsets, and those are there. We have the Merge headsets and Merge cubes, which is what we're using next week. I don't know if anybody here has explored those. It's a neat, kind of a neat technology. We have robot planners. We have, I mentioned the robot dog. There's quite a few things that we have. And the challenge for us is that our center, while the physical location is it's called Edinburgh, our Edinburgh campus. We're actually 3 campuses, and we have intellectual capital that is professors and staff using AI on all 3. So most of the work that we do is either online, you know what I mean, like remote. It's not actually in that actual building structure. But we needed a place for the locals to come because like today I met with a superintendent and he's like, can I come to the center? And I said, sure. So and obviously I needed a home as well. So because I'm on that campus, and we're not having any trouble. I mean, I don't even have to reach out. People are coming like every day. I have emails every day asking. I had one today. This is like the 5th alumni person since last week who sent me a message. I saw the information on the center. I'm working in the AI space. So now we have all this alumni outreach. Every time someone comes in, it creates a whole other initiative. So we have a community of practice set up for our community partners, and I meet with them now. We're going to meet for the first time in a couple weeks. And so a lot of these things, and I think that's important to say, when you create something with technology, and even when you're just in the classroom or whatever, people are going to come. If you're leading something and it's not just about the tech, it's about what that tech does to extend us, people are going to come to you. And it's one of those, like, you're never really prepared for that. People come to me all the time and I'll say, boy, that's a really great idea. I don't know what we should do. How about we sit on this and we'll have another conversation? And so I think that's important to say, that we're not just running because something's really cool and fun, but no, and we thought about, Mark, the ordering. We were very, very careful about how we name the center, because we did debate whether or not we should have emerging technologies before AI. And it was kind of decided by this group I was in that because AI is the most prevalent right now, and I have to say that's what most people are reaching out about. Like, I'm having to make a concerted effort to offer other things so that we don't forget that there's lots of other ways to, like you were saying, engage with multimodal, other kinds of technologies. That's not just AI, because there's a different tactile experience that you can have when you're using VR or AR or any other technology. I mean, I even have, you'll laugh, I have a stereo card viewer. I don't know if everyone here would know what that is.
I will laugh.
They're like old bent postcards. And
Yeah,
I
I mean,
have,
that's over 100 years old.
yeah. But when you look at the Meta headset, it's like, wow, that totally came from this history. And so I talk a lot about that in the center when people drop by. Like, did you have a Viewmaster? And that's absolutely part of the history of, I mean, even though it was a toy, it's absolutely part of this evolution. So
You and I can remember a time when not every teacher used technology or thought, many thought, I'll get to retirement without having to do that. But that sure has changed. But there's an awful lot of catch up going on, particularly in the graduate schools. Teachers were finally getting around to using Brain Pop or Google Classroom, and that's all well and good. But it's very encouraging to me to hear about the establishment of a center like this, which is going in the opposite direction. See, in this class, we've talked a little bit about robotics, nothing about augmented reality, virtual reality. These are still small efforts, and I think it's great that you're establishing a place where that's very receptive to doing stuff with that and pushing it out further and providing some expertise for those who may want it. And I'll say, as a bit of a digression, I was contacted by ISTE a couple of days back by the book division. They're about to put out a book. Do you know Rochelle Dene Poth?
yes,
A colleague of mine. I didn't have her in this semester as a guest, but she's visited this class a few times over the past few years. And yeah, they're going to put out yet another book by Rochelle called What the Tech. And they asked me to review it and write some blurbiage, to promote it a little bit. And so, I'm looking at what the book includes, and it's very kind of forward thinking. It's not new ways to use the same old technology. No, she's talking about AI, obviously. She's talking about blockchain technology. That's not even something I think of. I mean, I think of it as a cutting edge technology. I don't know how it's used in education. She's talking about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. She's talking about the metaverse. Well, that's something we know about. So anyhow, I, for one, think it's good that there are some people looking practically at the bleeding edge of things. I'm going to assume that might be a little bit of your mission too.
Yeah, I think it has to be practical in order for people to bite on it. And we were even talking today about, we've been doing these communities of practice, which are more informal professional development for our staff and faculty. And someone said, hey, Camille, in the fall, when you're outlining all these professional development opportunities, because we're going to have more webinars and things like that for our programming, could we do things that are like super practical? That's what, when you said that, I was thinking about that ask. And not that things haven't been, but we've just started. So it's like people are just identifying what would be helpful. So one person said, could we just have like an AI and grading session? So people could come in and maybe there's a presenter, but people can talk about all the ways that, like, the issues with AI and grading, and then like what kinds of things are being done with it. And then they just rattled off all kinds of other things that were super, super practical. And I thought, yeah, we can absolutely do some bare bones. Here's this thing, and let's all talk about what it is and who's doing what. And I've started using AI with grading, and it's quite an adventure, because I like really love to give personalized feedback. And I'm finding, just like all of you, when you're out, doing what you do, you're going to have your own struggles with balancing the needs of the students and balancing all the other things that you do, right? And so, it's an interesting dilemma. Like, to what extent do I use grading if I know this AI tool exists, but then I want to give authentic feedback, so it's not just a bot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to just outsource my human brain to a robot. But it's funny because I've started this practice where I'll ask the bot, like, I'll load my assignment information and I'll ask it to create like rubrics, for example. And I'll use some of those rubrics to help with the assessment piece. And of course, I always go through and I think about, okay, well, what did it generate that I maybe, I want to change it a little bit, right? Like, as humans, I think AI is meant to be an iterative process where we go back and forth with it. It's not just we get output and then we're using that. We get the output and then we play with that. We interchange some, change some words. We use our human brain to kind of wordsmith a little bit. And so, like, once I get that rubric the way I like it, then my grading process then becomes a little bit easier. So, I'm finding like rubric creation is one of the ways it's not only saving me time, but I mean, frankly, like, I've been designing rubrics for a long, long time. And I mean, this is going to sound really funny, but I feel like it does a better job than I do, at least with rubrics. I share it with them. I'm like, look what I created. Look what a mess it made of this. Oh, look how great this looks. Or what do you think? What do you think it did? And they're like, oh, well, there's that.
Well, I think that's kind of perfect. You're trying this set of power tools on. You're in control. You're going to stay in control. You're going to let it pick up some of your workload where and when you want. I think that's kind of beautiful and perfect. And it may sound very obvious, but we've been dealing with AI now since the release of ChatGPT as a free resource, like 2 years. I think we've been very lucky that you accepted my invitation. Thanks again. I'm sure Pennsylvania's going to do very well with having this center available and with you steering the boat, so to speak. So we got to tie this up with a little something, Camille. I was just thinking, how many K through 12 teachers are there in the U.S.? I don't know the number. It's a whopping number, tens and tens and tens of thousands, and they're all going to have to get themselves up to speed on this. And so I need to dump a hot potato in your lap. What would you recommend the average rank and file K through 12 teacher? How would you recommend they take charge of their own professional development a little bit? What are some things they would do?
Number one would be, we have the Connect environment on ISTE that has an AI community. And
look for a PLN.
Yeah. So this is a free environment, and there's a whole, there's a PLN that's related to AI. That's one of the best ways. And then ISTE also has a program called the ISTE AI Explorations. And they have all kinds of things in there. There's AI guides. So you can look to see, like, how would I go about teaching a 6th grade class? And there's examples and, lots of things that you can look at in those guides. ISTE AI You literally are you're going to get loads of stuff. And then they have a program where you can take a course, and every spring, if you're part of a teacher team, you could take that course together for free. So that's something to watch. Like those of you who aren't ISTE members, it's definitely worthwhile to be a member, because then you'll hear all kinds of things about AI, and I think that's one of the best ways. I mean, right now there's a lot online, and it's hard to know, what should I be looking at? And I'll be honest with you, I think right now, because of the explosion of things, it's not such a bad thing to use Perplexity or Claude or one of the big AI tools, to ask it, what are the best resources for a, K to 12 teacher, if I want to learn more about AI. And I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't give you a lot of great sources, because that's the way I've been using it.
Okay. I was going to, I'm saying now that one on my to-do list is creating a kind of curated bibliography. And so I'm definitely going to add the ISTE map. ISTE is always wonderful by me, but there is some wonderful stuff. I mean, EdWeek is a great source. They have something, even the U.S. Department of Education has a 71-page PDF embracing artificial intelligence in class. So that's on my to-do list, to create this bibliography start study list. You've been generous with your time. It's great to see you again, Camille. It's only been a quarter century.
Great to see you too. Yeah, I really appreciate the time, and I'm so excited to get to meet another group of educators, and if you can help any of these people out here that need support, and help them.
Peer leadership.
Yeah,
That's what the course is about.
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
Thank you, Camille. I will contact you tomorrow for a little follow-up. Again, really is great to see your face again.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.